Hello, welcome to the 26th day of February, 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily good life meditation. Something I do in the morning to remind myself of my life objectives and principles, and to see how I'm doing applying these to my day-to-day. First, how did I sleep last night? Well, the usual is that I go to bed at 9, and then my alarm goes off at 5 a.m., but I'm usually up sometime between 3 and 5. And once I'm up, I usually can't go back to sleep, but it's kind of a strange twilight sense. It's like, kind of like being a little bit awake and a little bit asleep at once. I know I'm awake, and I know I'm having conscious thoughts. It's not dream time. And I know I'm burning important time when my brain should be asleep, but nevertheless I'm up. And I know that it's not a good thing. It's actually a sign of stress and a type of anxiety to be getting up in the pre-dawn hours. I've looked into it, as opposed to not being able to sleep, for example, in the middle of the night, or having difficulty falling asleep. Waking up before the alarm is an alarming thing to be doing. And I've been doing that now for close to 2 years. So the good thing was that, and I did, stumbling over myself. The good thing was I got a lot of work done yesterday. But the bad thing was yesterday was a day off. So I shouldn't have been working, but I wanted to get some things settled for my big project. And I wanted to get a few things in place. And I realized that there was a chance I could get them done with a little bit of diligence. I didn't have to work steadily through the whole day. I could simply be doing my chores here in the house and some things I wanted to attend to, and then keep the email open and be arranging things and firing things back and forth. The good news is I did that. I succeeded in that. So if I hadn't done that, I imagine I would have been up in greater earnest in the pre-dawn hours. I have several friends who are also project managers, and I was texting with another friend of mine, and he and I, yesterday in the evening actually, I was telling him how we were talking about our projects, and I asked him how things were going, and he likewise, and I told him I said, I'm having trouble sleeping. He said the same thing. He told me that his pre-dawn waking begins his alarm doesn't go off till 7, but his pre-dawn waking begins around 2, which is, wow, very early. Maybe it's my profession. I have another friend, Michael. He might see this. Hi, Michael. He's also a project manager. And I don't know. I don't think I've asked Michael about the sleeping, but certainly about the stress that the work causes you. Anyway, so not a good night's sleep, but not as bad as it would have been if I hadn't done the work that I did yesterday. As for yesterday in the good life, I had kind of an internal thing that I realized, a meeting of principles, namely the principle of nature, and the recognizing the nature of a certain circumstance, namely a certain person, and then recognizing my true limit and my true opportunity in terms of how I can address that. And then I thought about it a lot, and then I had a talk with my wife over lunch about it, because it's always good to get her perspective. She's a wise woman. I think that talk will probably continue through the weekend. It's Saturday today. I think it's a better way to go than what I was doing before. Anyway, I'll leave that there. Let's do the good life. Oh, one last thing. I almost forgot. I wanted to show you a new addition to my home office. Isn't this a lovely portrait of Dr. Carl Sagan, author of the book Cosmos, who you can see my bookshelf reflected behind him there. I see the top shelf just above Dr. Sagan's head. That's my treasure books. So the shelf to over here, everything below there, these are the books that I want to read. It's my stack that I need to get through. And over here, these are the books that I have read, that I still have a copy of, that I still keep around. And then if you read any of my books, well, at least Going Alone in the Good Life, at the back there's a recommended reading list. It's about 15 books that I recommend reading, and that's the 15 up here. They're not all there. I have a couple that I'm trying to find in the order that I recommend them. And biggest one right there, you can see my finger pointing at, that's Cosmos by Carl Sagan. That's the second book in the list. Number one is Walden. The first one is Walden. So anyway, I found this on Etsy. It's a hand-drawn, it's a print of a pencil-drawn image of Dr. Sagan. And I bought it. And I bought it. It came to me in a PDF. I had it printed up at the copy store. It cost me $18 to have it printed. I bought this frame for like $2 at an estate sale. The estate sale I mentioned the other day. Isn't it, the detail is really nice. And it's got a lovely green in it. I don't know that green's coming through. Anyway, this shelf up here is going to be my author shelf. I've got Dostoevsky up there now. I'll add Dr. Sagan. I've now got prints. They're in the car because I'm taking them with me to thrift stores and yard sales looking for I want to have old frames to put these in. I've got prints of Henry David Thoreau and Nathaniel Hawthorne next. Big though, they're giant. Because they're two of my favorites. Well, Hawthorne being my favorite author of all time, and Thoreau being the most influential author in my life. I'm going to go someplace nice. All right, the good life. 7 objectives and 30 principles to help me to live better and to make better use of my time, so that when I die, I can leave with a sense that I did my best. Okay, number 1, first objective is to always be ready to die, to have my life sorted out, so that my life affairs, my relationships, and my life's work are in order. Number 2 is to make good and effective use of time, so that I'm not wasting my days, frittering them away, but making wholesome progress in the directions that I determine I want to go, that yield the best amount of virtue, the best, not amount, the best virtue for the time spent. Number 3 is the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. That is the eking out of these 7 objectives and 30 principles, and their daily attendance and maintenance. My 4th objective is to cultivate good emotional reactions. to live a measured, calculated, deliberate life, where even my reactions to things that ambush me reflect that way of living, to not fly off the handle. Even if I'm flying off the handle on the inside, to not wear that fact on the outside. The next objective is to perform good actions, just to make my passage through life a series of improvements and a series of good human encounters. Next is to recognize true limits and true opportunities, so that I'll know where my boundaries are, and I'll recognize my frontiers. My last objective is to just do one thing at a time, and to always do whatever that is, slowly and deliberately. Unless I'm running away from a tiger, in which case I'll do that as quick as I can. Those are my 7 objectives. Now for my 30 principles. Number 1 is the principle of war, to always be fighting against anything that I believe is true, and against every proposition of truth that comes my way that I deem to be important and worthy of careful consideration. Number 2 is the principle of reason, and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, and doubt, where reason is the instrument that I use to determine what is true. Being honest to myself and others. Objective in my assessments. And always a critically minded skeptic. The next principle is the homunculus. The idea that I don't have a soul. All I really get is this consciousness that is somehow an instantiation of awareness somewhere between my ears. Seems to be right back there, right behind the forehead. And that is a piece of my biology. And it will snuff out when my blood pressure drops sufficient that my consciousness stops. And a more complete state of gone will ensue that will resemble very closely the state of gone that I enjoyed before I was born. Or how did Lucretius say it? I finished Aristotle's book. I'm reading On the Nature of the Universe by Lucretius. And I highlighted something here. Here, he said it right here. I just read that yesterday. Lucretius, it's an epic poem. He says, "But he who has never tasted love of life, or ever been enrolled among the living, how does it hurt him not to have been made?" One more time. "But he who has never tasted love of life, or ever been enrolled among the living, how does it hurt him not to have been made?" That's exactly the sentiment that I'm referring to when I talk about the homunculus. He's talking about those that have never been born. How little harm that fact imparts upon them. Likewise, how little harm being dead will impart to us. Unless I've got it all wrong, and there is a heaven and hell, and then won't I be surprised? Next is the principle called the Anchorhold, the suggestion that our consciousness is trapped, isolated, as it clearly is if it's stuck in my head, and yours is too, and my family. And we can never really be any closer than this signaling across the spaces that we do, this speaking and gesturing and writing. Next is the home of good and evil. Suggestion that right and wrong are just ideas and opinions that we hold in our mind. Nothing more than that. There's no absolutes for those things. Then comes the principle of purpose, and there's 3 sub-principles of biology, being a family man. Virtue, living a life where I'm trying to improve the well-being of others and myself, their happiness. Wholesome happiness, where wholesome is defined as the improvement of well-being. That sounds a little circular, the way I said it. And then the last purpose is to pursue my mission, which is the writing of and sharing of my book, Going Alone. Available on Amazon and at goingalone.org. These objectives and principles are all laid out there. The next purpose, the next principle that is the atomic principle. Everything is made of bits and pieces, flowing and changing and forever transforming. Again, let's quote from Lucretius, who in the 1st century BC had a lot to say about atoms. Another quote, right, the one right below I just read. I just remember it because it was very impactful to me yesterday. So much so that I actually made a little meme to share on Instagram and around. Here we go. So many atoms in so many ways, smitten with blows through infinite time, and massed by their own weights together, have combined in every way, tried every variation of things that by them ever could be made. How the heck did he know that 2,100 years ago? The next principle is the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, including you and me. And it's good to recognize what that is and live in acceptance of those truths. Then comes the pirate ride, the idea that free will is an illusion. Then comes maturity, and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. We are mature when we remember our successes and failures, and we have the strength to improve upon these. And then the social principle, we need each other to survive. And then the principle of public speaking, a reminder to be very careful about what I say and what I write. Something that I've been doing lately that's been very interesting is that I'm taking much greater attention to my email at work. I write them. Maybe it's because lately the emails have been so very important and to a lot of big audiences. I write them, I review them again, and in the process they become refined. And when I'm satisfied that they are terse and to the point, accurate, and using good vocabulary, not flowery or showy vocabulary, but vocabulary that conveys the meaning that I want to convey in a easily consumed manner, then I'll send the message. Now, I'm not doing that with everybody. I don't compose that, I don't do that hard work with the email that I just sent to my fellow project manager. But I do that when I'm sending an email, for example, a broadcast email to the entire organization, which I did this week, or to the steering committee of directors for the departments that are involved. These are the types of email that I do that on at work. It's very satisfying to get the message down to a nice, tight package. The next principle is temperance, and the sub-principles of suffering, simplicity, and apathy. Or temperance is my controlled consumption of life, all things. The next principle is the horror show, the fact that life is a utter horror, despite the beautiful moments. And I just want to remember that fact, so that I deal with life in a realistic manner, even when things are going well. I'm on my guard, and I'm sensitive to the pain of others, which may be ongoing right below the surface. And that brings me to the next principle, which is called that which must be borne. What I have to bear is the fact of the horror show, and the fact of my responsibilities that I've taken on. Like the fact that I have a job that makes me get up before dawn to just mull it over. It's what I got to do. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I have responsibilities. I will support my family. That which must be borne. Next comes the Feast of Offal. What happens when we blow our top and yell at the world? And we do that in front of others, and we hurt them, or at least saddle them with our upset. I try not to do that. I don't think I do that anymore at all. I used to do that long ago, decades ago. And when other people are doing it around me, I don't swallow it up. I try not to. I exercise my temperance. But I do stand ready to offer a sympathetic arm if you need a hug. The next principle is distraction. Life is full of distractions. What are we distracting ourselves from? Well, that's the next principle. It's something that I call the Great Indifference, which is the awful backdrop of a universe without God that seems to just be pressing on without much regard for you or me, or any regard for that matter, incapable of regard. Screaming, howling emptiness that we will be a part of again once we're dead. Screaming isn't even a good word because it sounds like howling isn't even a good word. I shouldn't use those words. It's more than that. It's just I can't think of a word that doesn't ascribe some agency to it. A cacophony of entropy. Damn. Well, I'm not going to use that. I already got a plan. That's heavy. Okay. Those two principles there, distraction and agency and the Great Indifference. Next is the best seat in the house. It's a pretty good seat right here. It's my reading chair. It's my center of my universe right here. I like to spend my time there. I got my books, I got my pictures. Got the little light. Daikoku is over there. Daruma-san's over there. I've got a really good sound system around. I can control it with my phone. Listen to I like to listen to my ancient Roman music while I'm reading the Roman classics. Ooh, wow, it's amazing. It's a good seat. But the purpose of the principle is not to talk about my seat in my room. It's to talk about the idea that I want to be, I don't want to be anywhere else. I don't want to be anywhere else, anyone else, or be doing anything else. But I'll strive to be happy with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing right here, right now, right when. Right who? all the while striving to make things better, because there's always room to improve. The next principle is, the Path of Wildness, my very first principle. It's easy to find. It's the course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. It's also a way through and into a new life, by deciding it's time for a change, collecting facts relative to that change, deliberating upon them, and then making a decision. And if necessary, nudging that decision with our instinct. For example, my wife and I are considering going back to Japan. This will be the 5th time back and forth. It's another, it would be the Path of Wildness again. We're quite practiced on that path. It's also the route to follow, to experience the Great Indifference, to go alone into the wild. It's a real thing that's never been. Next comes the risk of avoiding risk. Life has the surface level risks of education, job, spouse, home and family, saving for retirement. The whole world is going to encourage us along those lines. Whole institutions are set up to that end. But there's also another risk, the deep risk, deep, of finding oneself, so to speak, and living a life actualized upon what we discovered. That's something that society is not as likely to encourage us upon. Not much in the way of institutions. We're kind of on our own. And we might not even have the support of our families. But I highly recommend it if you're so inclined. If you don't, you'll always be wondering. Next comes a principle called sin and damnation. The sins in my worldview are falsity, to be untrue, credulity, to believe things too quickly, hope, which is desire uncoupled from action, faith, which is belief founded on belief, superstition, a category of belief that basically resides next to nonsense, authority, belief based on the seeming office and establishment of whoever's making the claim, dogma, a belief because it's the tradition, it's in the book, it's canonical, and then gossip, which is not a form of belief, but gossip is what we do when we speak about others in a way that we'd be embarrassed to suddenly discover they were standing behind us. Oh, you're here. Oh, crap. Just don't do that. I'm getting really good at that. I just don't gossip anymore. Or very rarely. And the consequence of any of those sins is damnation in the here and now. Because there's no afterlife to be damned in. There's only a damnable living now. The next principle is complete oblivion. The recognition that after life, there's nothing. And as a result, we will not have a chance to reconnect with the ones we lost, that have died, we lost when we died. We won't see them again. And if we can't see them again, then we can't reconcile any differences, and we can't make right any injustices. Namely also because there is no God. There's no justice giver. Once we're dead, we're back to that same, what did I call it? The state of gone. We're back to that same state of gone. The only chance we have to any of those things is to pursue them in the here and now. Next comes the principle called the Great Life Adventure. One or more marquee events in our lives that become who we are. Yesterday I was getting my picture framed at Michael's, with their frame shop in the back, and they have like a little retail counter up front where they have a big table. You can put the stuff out and talk with the sales associate about what you want. They take your order, and then they have the frame shop in back with all the tools all laid out. And as they were ringing me up for my Carl Sagan purchase, framed job, framed Carl Sagan, I noticed in the back there was a very large, almost life-size frame. It must have been hundreds of dollars. And it was it was life-size because it was a complete Marine uniform with all the, like, so someone had been a Marine. It was their dress uniform with a hat and everything, mounted in a frame. And across I think it was the left breast, was all their medals. They must have had 10 medals across two rows. And then all around the periphery, giant frame, was all their, like, certificates, awards, I don't know, patches, I don't know enough about the military to know what these are. But they were all the things they had accumulated as a result of their military career. And I was sitting there looking at that, and I think that the person had probably died, and the family had put together this thing to hang on the wall and always remember their military career. That person, namely, of course, that person and their military career. And I was thinking to myself, wow, that's one of the best instantiations of a great life adventure that I've ever seen. Because military, as tragic and difficult and dangerous as it can be, is a great place to collect a great life adventure. I think of all the World War II vets that I once knew. They're mostly gone. The World War II vets you don't see them much anymore. But when I was a teenager in my 20s, they were all over the place. And those guys, a lot of them, that was a big part of their identity. The fact of their participation in the war and the Great War. Well, the Great War was World War One. But that too, I imagine, was the same. But those guys were gone by the time, were largely gone by the time I came around. But you get the point, right? This was their great life adventure. They really encapsulated it, much in the way that, for me, I encapsulate my great life adventure in this book. So this is the catalog and the result of my great life adventure, and the thing that I'm most proud of, besides my commitment as a husband and a father, the raising of our daughter. It's nice to have that. So I recommend it as one of my principles, is to, if you feel so inclined, then cultivate some great life adventure. It could be joining the military and having that experience, becoming a vet. Well, there's a lot of respect given that. It could be having literally an adventure of going off and doing something, maybe going to Thailand and making surf adventure there, or bicycling across Japan, or whatever you want to do. For me, it was going headfirst into the wilderness to take a close look at the Great Indifference, and then to write down what I recorded. Share that. I said enough about that. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. There's one more thing. It's best to do the adventure when you're young. It gets harder to do later. Now, the next principle is the season of philosophy, which is just an observation that life offers a season to record our inspiration, to receive. Yeah, I guess it does receive, because it kind of comes through our brain chemistry when it does. And as the ancients would say, when the muse would speak, my recommendation is to always be at the ready to record what the muse says. That's why I keep this and this right here next to me, so that when I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, if I have something that I want to say, I want to write down, I grab that and I write it down, and then I transfer it to my other more permanent mechanisms. The next principle is, after the season of philosophy, is the bullseye aim. Life is a striving to the bullseye, but we usually don't quite hit. Then comes the uphill climb. Life is an onward, upward climb all the time. Maybe that's the one I missed yesterday. No, I had too many yesterday. I had 31. And then I feel like I'm getting out of order right now. Go to Great Life Adventure, the Season of Philosophy. I feel like, is it Arena and Utility next? I think it's Bullseye Aim. Then Arena and Utility. Life is an arena where we can exercise, use our principles in the pursuit of better living. Then comes the uphill climb. Trudge, trudge, trudge. Don't forget to turn around and look at the view. Wow, look where I am. And then nothing, other than nothing is enough. Trying to just remind myself to get by with less. And then finally, the principle of fun. A reminder to have a good time. There, I did it. I didn't keep track of the numbers. I don't know if I missed one or gained one. All right, now let's plan for the coming day. It's a Saturday. My chores are nearly done. I cleaned the whole top floor of the house. After the family wakes up, I'll do the bottom. After this, I will finish this. I'll go read the Bible. I think I'm at Proverbs 15 today. No, 16 today. Yeah. Yesterday's reading was interesting. I got a couple of things that I keep a highlighter that I highlighted, including one comment about, what was it? I can't, it's over there. Interesting about the, I think it was Proverbs 15 about evil. It was interesting. Good enough to highlight. After that, my family will be asleep for the next couple of hours. The dogs, it's really cold. The dogs are nicely asleep right now. I'll make myself a cup of coffee, and I'll sit here and I'll read my book, my Lucretius, until the family gets up, and then I'll do my chores downstairs. I've got to wait because that'll involve the vacuum, and I don't want to wake them up. Of course, I'll take the dogs out as soon as the sun's up and warm enough, and then I'll start my day. And I think the Yumiko and I will go do our shopping today. We'll have a nice lunch together. We'll do some talking about important things. And I've got my tube with the two prints, the Nathaniel Hawthorne print and the Henry David Thoreau print. And I'll be looking for some frames that would be big enough to accommodate those. And won't I be lucky if I find one? That'll be fun. Okay. Thanks for joining me. Be safe, but not too safe.